There is a specific kind of confusion that lives inside a friendship when something starts to change. Not between strangers, not between people who just met and are still figuring out what they are to each other. Between two people who already know each other well, who have history and comfort and an established dynamic between them, and who are now navigating something neither of them has fully named yet. The friendship is still there. The ease is still there, but something has shifted underneath it, something that makes certain moments feel charged in a way they didn't used to feel, that makes certain silences carry more weight than the same silences carried 6 months ago. That makes both people slightly more aware of each other in ways that are difficult to attribute to anything specific but impossible to ignore once you have started noticing them. Today, we are going to talk about what is actually happening when a female friend starts feeling something more, how to read the signals that tell you something has changed, and what to do with that information in a way that honors both the connection you already have and the possibility of what it might be becoming. Before we get into the specific signals, you need to understand something important about how this transition actually happens in a woman's psychology, because it almost never happens the way men imagine it does. Most men picture female attraction as something that either exists from the beginning or doesn't exist at all, a switch that is either on or off from the first meeting. But attraction, particularly the kind that develops inside an existing friendship, works on an entirely different timeline and through an entirely different mechanism. It builds slowly, through accumulated experience rather than through a single moment of recognition. It grows in the spaces between ordinary interactions, in the way a man handled a difficult situation she watched him navigate, in the way he listened to something she told him that she doesn't tell most people, in the gradual accumulation of evidence about who he actually is underneath the surface that only becomes available through the sustained proximity of genuine friendship. By the time she is aware of feeling something more, she has usually been moving toward that awareness for longer than either of them realizes. The shift did not happen suddenly, it simply became visible suddenly. The first signal that something has changed is a new quality of self-consciousness in her behavior around you that was not there before. This is one of the earliest and most consistent indicators, and it is one of the easiest to miss because it can look, on the surface, like she is simply having an off day or being quieter than usual. But what you are actually observing is something more specific than that. She has become aware of herself through your eyes in a way she was not aware of before. She notices how she is sitting. She becomes slightly more deliberate about what she says before she says it. She is more attentive to small things about her appearance in your presence that she would not have thought twice about 6 months ago. This self-consciousness is not anxiety about the friendship. It is the very specific self-consciousness that comes from caring about how you specifically see her in a way that has moved past the comfortable, uncaring ease of established friendship into something that feels like it has more at stake. People do not become self-conscious in front of people whose opinion of them carries no particular weight. The arrival of self-consciousness is almost always the arrival of something that matters. The second signal is that she begins creating small opportunities for physical closeness that feel natural but happen with a new frequency. This is one of the most consistent behavioral changes that occurs when a friendship is shifting, and it is one that operates almost entirely below the level of conscious decision-making on her part. She does not sit down and decide to touch your arm more often. She finds herself doing it naturally because the internal distance between you has already closed in ways her behavior is simply catching up to. She sits closer than she used to sit. She finds reasons for her hand to land on your arm during conversation. She does not pull back quite as quickly from accidental physical contact as she might have before. None of these things in isolation constitute a signal, but the pattern of them, the new frequency with which physical proximity is being sought and maintained, is one of the clearest behavioral indicators available that something in how she experiences being near you has changed. The third signal is that the nature of what she shares with you begins to deepen in ways that go beyond what the friendship previously held. This one is particularly significant because it is not just about what she tells you, but about the specific quality of what she is willing to be vulnerable about in your presence. There is a level of self disclosure that is appropriate to friendship and that both people operate within comfortably over time. When a woman starts feeling something more, she often begins sharing things that sit just below that established level. Things that are slightly more personal, slightly more revealing of her inner life, slightly more honest about fears or hopes or feelings that she has not previously brought into the friendship. She is testing the safety of a deeper level of connection, checking to see whether the man who has been her friend can also be trusted with something more genuinely interior. This testing is almost never conscious. She is not strategically disclosing things to move the relationship forward. She is simply finding that the internal barrier that kept certain things private in the friendship has become more permeable because something in how she feels about you has shifted. The fourth signal is in how she responds to any indication that you might be interested in someone else. This is one of the most revealing signals available, and it is one that appears with remarkable consistency once something has shifted in her feelings. A female friend who feels nothing romantic toward you can hear about your interest in another woman with complete equanimity, with genuine enthusiasm for your happiness, with the uncomplicated warmth of someone who wants good things for you without any personal stake in the outcome. A female friend who has started feeling something more cannot quite do this. The response is usually not dramatic. She does not storm off or make a scene, but something changes in her energy when the topic arises. A slight quietness, a question that probes a little more than the situation requires. An observation about the other woman that carries a faint critical edge she would not have bothered with 6 months ago. She is not being irrational. She is simply revealing, through the small involuntary shifts in her response, that the outcome of your romantic life has acquired a personal significance it did not previously have. The fifth signal, and the one that requires the most careful reading because it carries the most genuine weight, is a new quality of attention she brings to ordinary moments between you. This is different from the self consciousness we discussed earlier. That was about how she presents herself to you. This is about how she receives you. She listens differently, with a quality of attention that is slightly more complete than it was before, that misses fewer things, that follows what you are saying with a focus that feels more personal than the good attention of a solid friendship. She remembers small things you mentioned in passing that have no particular reason to stick, except that they came from you. She notices changes in your mood that she might have glossed over before, because now the fine grain of how you are doing has a specific importance to her that it did not previously have. This quality of attention, this new granularity in how she receives you, is one of the most genuine indicators of all, because it is almost impossible to fake and almost impossible to sustain without real feeling behind it. Now we get to the question of what to do with all of this, and it is the question that requires the most care, because getting it wrong carries a real cost in a way that getting it wrong with a stranger does not. A friendship is something both people have invested in. It has its own value independent of where it might or might not go from here. So the approach to this moment cannot be cavalier, and it cannot be driven primarily by what you want the outcome to be. It has to be driven by honest attention to what is actually happening and genuine respect for both people involved in whatever that is. The most important thing to understand is that you do not need to force clarity before it is ready to arrive naturally. The signals we have described are early indicators of a shift, not a finished declaration. She may still be working out what she feels. She may not yet have given herself permission to fully acknowledge it. Pushing for a direct conversation before she has arrived, at that point herself, can create a pressure that collapses the natural process rather than supporting it. What you can do instead is simply be more genuinely present. Be the man whose company she is increasingly enjoying, for the reasons she is enjoying it. Let the conversations go to the deeper places she is beginning to open up. Respond to the self disclosure with the kind of honest reciprocal sharing that tells her the deeper level is safe. Let the physical ease that is developing continue to develop without either forcing it or pulling back from it out of uncertainty. And when the moment comes, as it usually does, when both people are genuinely paying attention, where something passes between you that is clearly more than friendship and clearly acknowledged by both of you simultaneously, that is when directness serves you, not before, not as a strategy deployed to create the moment, as a genuine response to a moment that has arrived on its own because two people who already know each other well finally allowed themselves to actually see what was already there.